I'm Ann Charles.
I'm Linda Quinlan.
I'm Keith Ghostland, and Happy New Year. And welcome to our first show of 2018 of All Things LGBTQ. We're actually taping on Thursday, January 4th, so we might give you a little update about what those legislators have been up to already. But now some headlines.
International headlines. I have a little recap of global LGBT rights in 2017. U.S. blacklists Chechen leader and 4 others for human rights abuses and corruption. LGBTQ Ukrainians are finding shelter in Kiev. A Thai trans boxer to blaze trail in France. Canada's first trans mayor elected in a village west of Montreal. Wedding relief for 4 gay couples. This is a follow-up to the mess in Bermuda. 4 gay couples have been approved to marry on a cruise ship, but the person who's the governor is still dithering about what to do about that circumstance that I reported on last time. Singapore gay man fails to adopt child he had via surrogacy. A lesbian couple sues the Bulgarian court in the first ever fight for same-sex marriage recognition. So those are my headlines.
Very good.
Glad you liked them.
And we're going to have to find a different cruise because we're not going to Bermuda.
No,
No.
certainly not.
No. Even if they pass it now, it's like kind of... Anyway, we have a story on Mike Pence and a gay flag. And a federal...
Was he wearing it?
No, I wish he was.
Yeah, no way there.
And a federal judge in Chicago has refused to grant an injunction blocking a transgender inclusive restroom and locker room. Transgender people start going into the military, or they have as of January 1st. This is arguably the most high-profile race of 2018 involving an LGBT candidate. Emmy Award-winning Master of None star Lena Waithe has signed on to a part of the Legal Defense Fund to help LGBT women and women of color. 2 men have been arrested in the brutal killing of a lesbian family. The Victory Fund endorsed candidate Jenny Durkin is victorious. Google apologizes for banning the use of words like dyke, bisexual, or gay. And then I'm just going to do a little lesbian history about some women from days of old who were lesbian that people may not know about. And yeah, well, besides Eleanor.
Okay.
And I want to show a picture of Alabama's new Doug Jones being sworn in yesterday with his gay son looking on. This picture is priceless. And we'll show that now. He's giving some really good looks at Mike Pence as he's swearing in.
But I understand they didn't include the boutonniere that he was wearing.
Oh.
It was made by a group called DC Queers, and it was the shape of a daisy, but it was in rainbow colors.
I didn't see that in the picture.
I think his mother was standing so that her shoulder obscured it.
But boy, he gave some
Oh, didn't
look.
he just?
And there's a standoff between former Atlantic Fire Chief Kevin Koch.
Atlanta?
Yes. Did you think it was somewhere else?
You said Atlantic. I understood you to say Atlantic. I don't know.
The whole
Maybe it
ocean.
Between the fire chief Calvin Cochran and the city. So there'll be more news about that. Okay, Keith, on to you.
They're back. The legislature opened their session this week. Some of the pieces of legislation that I'm going to talk about and that we're going to be following over the course of who knows how many months. There's a family leave bill that could grant up to 6 weeks of paid leave. There is H333, which is the bill that would create a gender-neutral bathroom if it is a single-use bathroom. And from having been at the local car dealership recently, they had 3 bathrooms, male, female, and family. Who knows? H422, this passed the House last year, will be of interest to our community. This is the bill that will allow law enforcement to confiscate weapons when a domestic assault occurs.
Oh, good.
Please, let's get the weapon out of the house.
Because wasn't there someone
Yeah.
walking around the street in St. Albans recently
Yes.
Yeah.
for domestic violence who was walking towards his ex-girlfriend's house with a rifle or something?
There we are.
Yeah,
Luckily, he was,
he was stopped.
I'm just going game hunting.
Yeah.
Right.
God,
Last year, there was a bill that was passed, H502, which put together a study commission saying, okay, in the instance of assisted reproductive technology, how do we determine parentage? Or what parental rights go to which party involved? And this was a real push from the Vermont Supreme Court, and there was a recent case where Beth Robinson wrote the majority opinion, and it was again about a household where one of the partners had not legally adopted the child, but was suing for visitation, custody, and there is nothing in statute that gives them any guidelines on what to do. So the Supreme Court said it's time. Minimum wage is up again, and we'll review that. There was an incident at the Pride Center where a nationally known conservative organization came in and taped a public forum on health care for the transgender community, and then created a YouTube that tried to portray the Pride Center as teaching people how to manipulate the public entitlement system. All kinds of drama surrounding that. The Senate's already, on their first day, done training on sexual harassment for all of their members. Oh, we will definitely be following this.
yes.
Illinois has enacted a ban on the gay panic defense.
Oh, good.
Might we be doing that here? And 45 fired, dismissed. Your services are no longer required to all of the members of the Presidential Advisory Commission on AIDS. Like it's gone away? Okay, girlfriend.
Let's move on to a recap of 2017. Despite a
Must we?
deterioration of rights in some countries, like our own, in many ways, 2017 was a banner year for LGBT progress. While much of the world's attention was focused on a certain deplorable in the Oval Office, the damage he inflicted on democratic human rights and norms is only part of the story. LGBT movements around the world have seen impressive gains. On an equal marriage front, we had victories on every continent. Nearly 2 decades of political prevaricating over gay marriage on both sides of Australia's political spectrum came to an end this month with the final passage of the same-sex marriage bill. And many of you may have seen clips of Sydney fireworks on New Year's Eve, rainbow fireworks in honor of this enactment. That victory is a credit to the Australian activist community's sustained campaigning in the face of overwhelming government hostility. On the other side of the world, Germany tumbled into legalizing same-sex marriage after an offhand, possibly calculated comment by Chancellor Angela Merkel on TV. A month later, it was law. A little to the south, and this I've reported on. Equal marriage arrived in Malta, one of our favorite vacation spots, after the entire political establishment suddenly found itself in agreement on this issue. Equal marriage projects were also advanced in Chile and Switzerland's legislatures. Courts have also recognized the fundamental right to marriage, due to take effect soon, in both Austria and Taiwan. Courts also expanded marriage equality into 3 additional Mexican states, At the time of writing, final rulings in equal marriage cases are also expected in Panama, Venezuela, Peru, and Namibia. And a case at the European Court of Justice could impact marriage equality across 14 European Union states that do not recognize LGBT marriage. The victory for marriage in Taiwan seems particularly important. It's a first victory for the movement in Asia and has sparked calls for equal marriage throughout the region. Newspapers reported politicians discussing the possibility of expanding LGBT couples' rights in Japan, Thailand, China, and Hong Kong. In a surprise move, Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, and I mentioned this last time and pronounced his name wrong, I said Duarte. Duterte declared himself in favor of same-sex marriage, which was a great surprise. Semi-autonomous territories also legalized same-sex marriage. The UK territories Alderney, Guernsey, Falkland Islands, St. Helena, Ascension, Tristan da Cunha, and the Danish Faroe Islands.
But not Bermuda.
Not Bermuda.
That's why we're going to Malta.
Yeah.
Marriage, actually, marriage equality also came to Bermuda, but a repeal bill has been passed by the new government, which we discussed, although those 4 couples on the cruise ship have been able to get married. It's still pending the governor's approval. Who knows how that's going to turn out. On the decriminalization front, none of the 76 countries that criminalize queer people repealed their anti-gay laws. However, new criminal codes are expected to pass in Angola and the Cook Islands next year, which may cut into those numbers. In what could be the biggest victory for the movement in ages, the Supreme Court of India hinted in a related judgment earlier this year that it will strike down the nation's colonial anti-gay laws soon. What was unthinkable a decade ago could be true in just a few short years, given the current trends. The number of equal marriage countries, more than 24, could soon be greater than the number of criminalizing countries. And then we talk about the role that the United States under the Trump administration is not playing in any of these advances. Similarly, horrific crackdowns on LGBT people, and we know all of this, but I'm just recapping it, have been widely reported in Russia and Chechnya. They also began or worsened in Egypt, Uganda, Tajikistan, Indonesia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, and Tanzania. Arbitrary raids, arrests, beatings, and executions would, in the normal course of events, be condemned by the United States, but not under this administration. Though the White House has abdicated the bully pulpit, a chorus of voices across America and the world has risen up in resistance to the dark forces of hate and repression that appear to be gathering strength. Now, we have talked about the dramatic victory of Doug Jones and the encouraging election results on November 18th. Europe has also seen a surge in the fortunes of far-right parties, and the far-right Austrian Freedom Party took 3rd place in October's legislative elections. It's now a junior party in a coalition government. But the global backlash against Trump and right-wing hate ultimately resulted in defeat for the far-right nationalist and conservative parties in elections in France, the Netherlands, and Germany. As the U.S. government retreats on rights issues, other actors are beginning to fill the void, with the EU, Canada, and other democracies stepping up and embracing leadership roles. The American public, through non-governmental organizations and even just through marches and social media campaigns, has also been effective at naming and shaming human rights abusers. There's still at least 3 more years in this presidency.
Unless he's impeached.
Unless he's impeached or forced to resign. Or
melts down.
Well, he melts down daily, hourly. In any event, The LGBT community will have to rely on these new leaders to continue to serve as watchdogs and guardians of rights already won and still being fought for. So on balance, there's good news and bad news, but mostly good news, according to this recap, which I choose to emphasize.
And
Are
we're
you-
still here.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So are you going to do one more story and then we'll?
I'll do one
okay.
more if you wish, sure. And this is kind of a positive thing. The U.S. blacklists
The homophobe of the year.
Ramzan Karadov, accusing him of overseeing a systematic campaign of deadly repression. This is sanctions were levied by the Treasury Department. They're using the Magnitsky Act, which refers to the death of a whistleblower named Magnitsky, who died while in prison after reporting economic corruption in Russia. Head of the Kadyrov, to return to him, head of the Chechen Republic, is responsible for disappearances, extrajudicial killings, torture, and other violations committed against people seeking to expose government wrongdoing. The move brings to 49 the number of people now subject to U.S. economic sanctions under laws adopted following Magnitsky's death. We will continue to use the Magnitsky Act to aggressively target gross violators of human rights in Russia, including individuals responsible for the killings, the torture, and other despicable acts. The sanctions effectively lock their targets out of much of the international banking system and freeze any assets they may have in U.S. jurisdiction. Another point of interest is a prison warden named Katchev, who allegedly oversaw the detention and torture of gay men, has been targeted by this sanction also. So,
Good.
a minor step by the Trump administration to, right this terrible atrocity in Chechnya.
And speaking of 45, how about Steve Bannon's new book?
Oh!
No, it's not his book. It's
Steve,
Dan.
he
Contributed. He was
he was the
interviewed
primary-
extensively.
Really? Is that what it
Yes,
was?
Dan Wolf.
Okay.
I think that's
Right.
the name of the.
Well, may they continue to eat their own is all I can say.
What a kettle of fish.
Yeah, that was a fun thing to hear about. And then, all that backpedaling to figure out, like how they're going to cover themselves, the 45 administrators.
traitors?
Yes, the
Yes,
traitors. The
I love
traitors.
that
Isn't that
language.
wonderful? I like that.
Traitorous.
Okay. And speaking of that, and the vice president,
Oh, we moved. from-
Mike Pence. In Colorado, he has a house, and his neighbors put up a rainbow-colored banner on a stone pillar at the end of his driveway to both of his homes near a Parsky Resort in Aspen. The banner reads, "Make America Gay Again," a play, of course, on Donald Trump's campaign slogan. And Pitkin County Sheriff Deputy Michael Buglione told the Aspen News that the Secret Service agents weren't bothered by the sign. Pence has described himself as a Christian first, a conservative, and then a Republican in that order. He's opposed to legislation prohibiting discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people in the workplace. Pence and his family arrived in Aspen Tuesday and plan to leave on Monday. So that was kind of
I
fun.
hope it's well lit.
Yeah.
A few
it's
lights
right
on
around
the-
this, yeah.
I thought it was his second home, but
I think he has two homes.
one in.
Yeah. And this one was near
Because
Aspen.
he wasn't governor of Colorado. So
No.
that this would be the vacation
This was his
home.
Oh, I
vacation
see.
home.
I see. And he didn't describe.
Where he would go for private meditation and retreat. Reflection.
Uh-huh.
So
And
anyway,
it's interesting that he didn't describe himself as a deplorable. I would have added that to his.
yeah, but he didn't call himself that. We
Yeah.
call him that, but
Okay.
Okay. So a federal judge in Chicago has refused to grant an injunction blocking a transgender inclusive restroom and locker room policy in the suburban school district. More than 50 families represented by the far-right Alliance Defending Freedom has sued Township High School District 211 in the northeast suburb of Palatine, seeking to end the policy. They sought the injunction to suspend the policy while their suit proceeds through the courts. And it looks like transgender people are going to be able to start going into the military. I think they have started as of January 1st. Two appeal courts in December denied the Trump administration request to delay, so I think they're going forward on that, and that's good news.
But their retaliation is the Department of Justice is about to withdraw the Obama guidelines for the incarceration of the transgender community.
Yeah, and I guess Obama administration lifted the ban in 2016. So we'll see what happens with that. I guess it's going to be an ongoing.
One step forward,
Yeah,
two steps back.
And three-time Democratic Congresswoman, is it Kirsten Sinema, is vying to replace retiring GOP Senator Jeff Flake for Arizona's junior seat. Sinema, openly bisexual, is extremely popular and has an inspiring personal story. She was raised in a gas station. The moderate Democrat faces a few serious challenges in the primary. It's her She was raised
in a gas station.
Yeah.
What an odd person.
Yeah, that's what she says. She was raised.
Welcome to the new year.
Anyway, she challenges in the primary. It's her Republican opponent who remains the big question. Former state senator Kelly Ward is the only announced candidate, but she's a toxic conservative who spouted anti-trans and anti-immigrant rhetoric. So,
May I just add something?
what?
I heard that Michelle
Pump your own?
Bachmann is
Oh,
thinking
she's
of
gonna
running
run
for
for-
Al Franken's seat.
Yes, I know.
That's discouraging to see
And
more
Mitt
of her
Romney
in
for
the new
Orrin
year.
Hatches.
Yeah.
And you would say, how could she win? But after Trump, I'm never going to say that again.
Oh, I know.
It's
she
just-
won before. She was representative.
Well,
wasn't she?
representative is one thing, but senator,
Well,
I know. Never say
Am
never.
I smiling? Okay, so how many people noticed that I forgot to mention the trivia question?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the trivia question, in recognition of our legislature opening their session this week, this is the legislation that resulted in the conviction of over 15,000 gay men and resulted in their incarceration into the concentration camps during the Holocaust. So moving on from that to family leave, because there is no connection. H-196 is a bill that is has come out of the House. It will be in the Senate during this year, and it would allow 6 weeks of paid family leave for businesses that have 10 or more employees who work 30 hours or more per week. And why we're going to want to watch this is that family leave not only includes the birth, adoption of a child, but the illness of a family member. Let's be watching how a family member gets defined and how inclusive of it is of our relationships and how they're formed. The other piece of legislation is H333, which we talked a whole lot about last year because some of us seem to be obsessed with bathrooms. But this is the legislation that passed the House, is now in the Senate, which would designate if it is a single-use bathroom, it is a gender-neutral bathroom.
But-
Anybody can use it.
But I've really noticed, in some places, there's been some real change about bathroom entitling bathrooms. But in a lot of Vermont, I still see male, female, single bathrooms, and I
Yes.
don't know why.
Well, the Historical Society in Barrie, when I was over there doing research on our community history, I went into the hallway and here was a women's room, a men's room, and there were single-use bathroom.
I don't get why they
I
haven't
need
changed
to
that.
walk 15 more feet down to,
Yes.
there we are.
Yeah.
The other piece of legislation that we don't talk about a lot that really does have impact on our community is H422, and this has passed the House. It is now in Senate Judiciary. And this is what will allow law enforcement to confiscate weapons when they intercede to resolve, domestic violence, domestic assault. And the statistics coming out of the Centers for Disease Control when they were allowed to say these things, lesbians
They haven't
looking
been
at,
fired yet?
no, they
Oh,
they
all right.
can't, but
Oh, okay.
they're not appointees. They don't serve at the pleasure of. Looking at the statistics that they've put out, lesbians have a 15% higher incidence of domestic violence than straight women do. Gay men have almost a 20% higher incident of domestic violence
With each other?
than straight men. The transgender community has approximately a 34%
Wow.
higher incident of domestic violence. And the highest are those women who identify as being bisexual, which is just, but it's one of those issues that as a community, we really don't talk about,
Yeah.
and the impact that it has on this. And this is actually a piece of legislation that could go far in bringing about culture change. And Vermont is one of those places where years ago, when the domestic and sexual violence statutes were being revised, it was expanded to include household members with a very broad definition so that anyone who was living in a shared situation would be included with this piece of legislation.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So this means that more lesbian partners beat up
Each
each
other.
other than
Straight-
heterosexual men beat up straight women?
No, because, no, you're
I was
looking,
confused
yeah, I know.
by that statistic.
Because
Can
when you talk
clarify,
about,
please?
because when you talk about domestic violence,
Yeah,
it is not just you hitting Linda,
Uh-huh.
but if I'm your brother and I hit you because you're a lesbian, that's domestic violence.
oh, and that's, we've reported
And
on a lot of those stories.
bingo.
Boy,
Yeah.
ex-boyfriend.
See, that's why
Yeah.
we as a community really haven't talked about it, so we're still sort of stuck in this tunnel vision of domestic violence is what happens
Right,
between partners,
exactly.
not necessarily families.
Uh-huh.
Or you're a lesbian with a straight roommate and your household member
Beats me up.
beats you up. And one of the things that the Centers for Disease Control included in their study, which I thought was wonderful, is domestic violence if I threaten to out you.
Oh, right.
Remember, domestic violence
yep.
is
Sure.
emotional, financial exploitation, as well as the sexual and physical violence. So.
Well, thanks.
I'm
That
glad,
makes
no,
more
but I'm
sense.
glad you asked
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's the conversation we should be having.
Yeah. And presented as it is, it's kind of confusing.
It could be a parent and a gay child, too.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, and
as
how many
we
times have we reported on
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But on that cherry, uplifting.
Back to international news.
All right, I have some positive news from Kiev. Right before you now, we have a picture of activists protesting in Kiev. Same-sex, gay sex has been legal in the Ukraine since 1991, but it's still taboo. The country scored 19 out of 100 points in the 2016 survey funded by the European Rainbow Europe, ranking LGBT people's rights. Inside, a local gay rights group runs Ukraine's first and only LGBT shelter, a 4-room flat with bunk beds, a kitchen, and a communal area in an old apartment block outside of Kiev's central district. It's not safe to be LGBT in Kiev or elsewhere in the Ukraine. More than 10,000 people have been killed and 1.6 million forced from their homes. because of all the political unrest in the Ukraine. Members of the LGBT community have also been affected by this violence, with many people losing their jobs, having their houses damaged, or suffering homophobic attacks amid the upheaval. Some supporters of LGBT rights see progress in Ukraine is symptomatic of the country's closer integration with the European Union and rejecting its ties with neighboring Russia. So it's still not good. There's a shelter. Commentators say things might be improving there. We will see. Now we move to a Thai trans boxer who's about to box in France. That's right. And I have a picture of this person, Nong Rose, who grew up a twin. And in the eyes of the Thai government, he's still a man named Somros Pancharion. But she has always felt like a girl, started dressing like one at the age of 14. She competes with men in the ring. And I think I mentioned there's going to be a picture of her there. While Thailand has a reputation as a free-spirited haven for LGBTQ people, discrimination abounds outside of the nightlife and entertainment venues. Many trans Thais say they are treated like second-class citizens, while changing genders was considered a mental illness by the military as recently as 2012. Nong Rose is not the first transgender boxer in Thailand. Nong Tum, whose story is captured in the 2004 film Beautiful Boxer, led the way, famously using her championship winnings to pay for a sex change. She was my role model, Nong Rose adds, that the fighter comes to support her at most matches. Nong Rose says she plans to transition to the next step after her boxing days are over. In the picture, she's wearing a pink bra and very bright lipstick. Today, I do not take hormones because it affects my condition and my boxing. When you are on hormones, you have much less energy. But as soon as I stop boxing, I'll do the operation to finish my transformation. So a big fight is coming up in France where Nong Rose is going to compete and maybe win. You can tell. Canada's first trans mayor has been elected in a village west of Montreal, and she's pictured here. It's in a small village, Tre Saint-Romtoux, near the Ontario border, but in Quebec. It's known for its towering historical Catholic church. Now it's home to Canada's first openly transgender mayor. This election flew under the radar as the surprising victory of Valérie Plante, Montreal's first elected woman mayor, stole the headlines. Nevertheless, Lemieux is her name, Julie Lemieux, and there she's pictured. She's 45. She isn't the only trans person to be elected in Canada. Not only is she the first openly trans person to be elected in Canada, she's the first woman to be elected in her municipality, founded in 1880.
Oh, wow.
And this story was full of pictures of chickens, and the reason is a key election issue in the village has been whether to allow chickens in residents' backyards, something Lemieux has supported on social media and says she will make one of her first orders of business. So not only
Chickens growing up in gas stations. Okay, we're on a roll tonight.
I support the chickens, and I'm glad she was elected.
That was an issue in Graniteville, outside
Really?
of Barrie, several years ago, where it became very trendy to have domestic chickens in your backyard, and there was a huge debate about zoning and ordinances and odor and just health concern.
What was the outcome?
I think the people were allowed to keep the chickens.
I think they banned chickens in Montpelier, didn't they?
We have chickens who are neighbors.
No, those chickens are gone.
We digress.
Anyway, Emmy Award-winning Master of None star Lena Waithe has signed a petition for the Defense Fund to help LGBT women and women of color. So it's to seek equal representation and opportunities, benefits and pay for all women workers, not to mention greater representation of women of color, immigrant women, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender women whose experiences in the workforce are often significantly worse than their white, cisgender, straight peers. Waith has been vigorously tweeting to help get more people involved with the Time's Up initiative. I stand with women across every industry to say, time's up on abuse, harassment, marginalization, and underrepresentation, she's tweeted, urging people to donate to the fund. So if you see that on Twitter or on Facebook, you might want to consider making a contribution. It sounds like a worthy cause. Yeah.
And I hope it's effective, because
Yeah.
part of this whole Me Too thing has sort of pretty much involved powerful men, and as we all know, that kind of much harassment occurs in working class sectors and work situations. So I hope it succeeds.
And the article also talked a lot about, Ford Motor Company and some of the other 1950s workplaces that were just filled with
sexual harassment
and stuff. So
Phil Scott has just issued an executive order that all state employees have to go back through sexual harassment training. And originally it was supervisory level, management level. It's being extended to all state employees. So.
And it's not like we haven't done this before either. I mean, there's been many workshops, and even while I was working, which
Sure.
Talked about this, but it doesn't seem to. I don't know whether people don't take it seriously or not.
Because the approach has been one and done, and it's the enforcement that happens afterward that's the telling factor.
Yeah.
Or doesn't happen.
Exactly.
If management isn't supporting people who make claims or say something, then everybody just figures they can.
An environment where people can approach.
Right.
it.
Right.
So,
And a very sad story, a brutal killing of a lesbian family. This was really tragic. And police announced early this morning that 2 men were arrested for a quadruple homicide that claimed the lives of a lesbian couple and their 2 kids. Justin Seaman, 24, and James White, 38, both face 4 charges of first and second-degree murder. They have both entered pleas of not guilty. Shanta Myers, 36, her 2 children, Shanice, 5, and Jeremiah, 11, and her parents, Brady Mells, 22, were found dead in their home in Troy, New York, the day
Whose
after
parents?
Christmas.
The parents of the children.
Okay.
The day
2
after-
lesbian parents. Huh?
Yes. The day after Christmas. Investigators believe they were killed the previous Thursday, December 21st. Shanta's oldest son, Isaiah Smith, 15, was away when the murder happened, and he is the sole survivor of his family. Police have not released many details about the crime, but Tedesco said that there were indications that the family was targeted. Both Man and White are from nearby Schenectady, which is where they were arrested. At a press conference held today, police say they knew the victims, but would not say how or discuss the motive because of the ongoing investigation. Both Man and White have a criminal record. Man is currently on parole. Tedesco said that he's confident there will not be any more arrests in this case. So,
That's mysterious and disturbing.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
because there's no motive that's been put forward.
yeah.
So.
But I guess they did know each other, but the police aren't saying how they knew each other. So,
Yeah.
that was just, and also I had a picture of of the people involved in the people who were
Suspects?
murdered,
Oh, the victims.
family.
the victims, yeah. So, I don't know, I guess we'll just have to wait and find out, but it was
Awful.
awful, just awful. When I heard about it, I thought, oh my God, no, you know. I have a trailer for a movie that hopefully will be shown after I tell you a little bit about this. And it's there's some diverse lesbian representation on the show in which female friendship is the main game. The female boss is not portrayed as a crazy, power-hungry cow, and exploring your sexuality is seen as normal, valid, and to be encouraged. And this new movie called The Bold Type. And if you're interested in any of that, it could be of interest to you. The relationship we are most here for at the moment is between Kat, a pansexual, biracial black woman working as a social media director at the Women's Magazine, and Scarlett and Adina, an Iranian lesbian Muslim photographer. The two sizzle in their scenes together, and Kate's coming out to her friends is totally positive and open and wonderful. So here's the trailer for this.
For the past 4 years, the three of us have toiled away together in the assistant trenches.
I just got a story proved. Are you not wearing a bra?
I expect you to unleash holy hell on anyone who tries to hold you back.
I'm a feminist, and so is this magazine.
It's about clothes and makeup.
That's actually a common misconception.
In the club with my bad bitches.
Any problems with the JJ?
Yeah, it's not 2006. Oh, wait, is that him? Oh my God, it's him.
I got myself drunk enough to express my emotions. Are you sure you want to do that right now?
Yes.
Gosh, worst pep talk ever.
My Twitter bio literally reads, proud Muslim lesbian.
Adina's been detained at the airport. I need to fix this. Everyone, listen up. We are all going to tweet that a woman is being held against her will.
Describe your panties.
Hold, please. How can you not tell us that you're having sex with Richard Hunter? I can screw whoever I want.
I have Beyonce on the line for you. Beyonce Knowles.
Yes, I figured you meant that, Beyonce.
The Bold Type, 2-hour series premiere Tuesday, July 11th at 9/8 Central on Freeform and on demand.
Okay, and I'll do this one, and then I will pass the torch to Keith. The Victory Fund endorsed candidate Jenny Durkin is victorious and will become the first out lesbian mayor of Seattle. Currently, there is just one open lesbian mayor of a major U.S. city, Salt Lake City Mayor Jackie Biskupski. Victory Fund President and CEO Aisha C. Modi Mills released the following statement about the win. We are thrilled Jenny will become the first lesbian mayor of Seattle and just the second woman elected to the position, said Victory Fund President and CEO Moody Mills. Both women and lesbians are severely underrepresented at all levels of government, especially executive positions. While Seattle voters chose Jenny because of her proven track record of leading innovative reforms and fighting for all communities, is also undeniably proud moment for the LGBT community, which continues to see this strong leader break down barriers.
Here,
So
here.
here,
Right.
here.
So moving on in strong political, other pieces of legislation we're going to be following, as I had said earlier, H502 created the formation of a study commission about how you assign parentage when assisted reproductive technology, a euphemism I'm going to have to get used to, is employed. And one of the things we're going to want to watch is exactly how the legislature constructs parental rights and ensure that it is truly in recognition of our relationships.
Yep.
And how people from within our community may use assisted reproductive technology. From Resolve New England, which is an advocacy group, they particularly identified the lesbian community as being someone for whom this would be of great impact. That really looking at ensuring that all of those relationships are fully acknowledged, no aspect of it is diminished. A piece of unfinished business from last year is H492, which is the establishment of a racial justice oversight board. And this would look statewide at policies, procedures, the judicial system, how it's being employed, any issues that might be in place. And this would allow a commission to oversee that and would actually actively pursue it. Last year, this was broken away, and it was the fair and impartial policing that was passed as the greatest priority. And a side note, the two liaisons may have been approached by public safety asking for our direct involvement.
The LGBTQ liaison?
Exactly. We have other liaisons?
It's important.
I thought we weren't supposed to talk about those in public forums. Brenda Churchill and myself have been asked and have already met with leadership within public safety to look at the fair and impartial policing policy as it is written. And more importantly, let's talk about the education that's going to be surrounding it, the implementation, and not just the written policy, but how it actually translates into policing protocols. Because that will be the telling element. One of the things about fair and impartial policing in undocumented immigrants, migrant justice really didn't like the language because they wanted a clear prohibition that no information would be shared with ICE, with the feds. Well, federal statute doesn't allow you to do that. And once, if I'm arrested and my name is put into the ICDC computer, it then hits up against all of immigrations and all of the other criminal databases. But if you're not asking the question to begin with, that may be a way around that. The other issue we really want to watch is minimum wage. Everyone is saying this is a priority. Well, there were 6 bills that were introduced last year specifically about minimum wage. None of them went anyplace. They're all aiming toward a minimum wage of $15 per hour, but where they vary is how quickly that would be implemented, the steps that might precede that, like there's a sort of a step level.
I will be surprised if that goes anywhere, honestly.
I hope it does.
I hope it does too, but I don't see the will to really make that happen.
Both House and Senate leadership are saying this is a priority for them. So we'll
so.
see. And what we saw when Equality Maine was supporting this as a public referendum item, we're underemployed, we're underpaid, and particularly those members of the transgender community, and raising the minimum wage is the single most effective thing that could be done to balance that inequity. The Pride Center had been doing a series of public forums on health care for the transgendered community, how to access what are the services that are available, what you're entitled to, how you get them. And what happened is, and it came out of the Mr. Sister controversy, some of the conservative elements that had been following that came in, misrepresented themselves, taped this public forum or this information session, and then went back and edited it so it looked as though those people from the Pride Center were trying to tell the transgender community how to manipulate and exploit the public entitlement system.
I know.
It was posted on YouTube. There were
took it
multiple,
off, finally.
to YouTube, was deluged with complaints saying, wait a minute, this is not okay, this is a violation of your policies. They finally agreed, took it down. But what resulted is there's a conversation that's happening with the Civil Rights Enforcement Division of the Office of our State Attorney General about what can we do in response to situations like this so we're not so vulnerable. Representative Bill Lippert of Heinsberg, who is our longest-serving openly gay legislator, has reserved a space in the Legislative Council to try and come up with language to ensure that you are not covertly taped and then it used in a manner that's defaming to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then really quickly, the last thing, Illinois, that hotbed of progressive legislation, has put into effect a ban on the use of the gay panic defense, which says that sort of heat of the moment response.
I didn't know he was gay and I killed him.
I didn't know she was transgender, so she now has to die.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is what the comedian had done.
Yeah.
They've clearly banned it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a conversation that's going on with our Office of Attorney
And a
General
good one.
again.
I think we need to do that.
Well, it also looks, one of the conversations that we're having with the Office of the Attorney General is, do we need new language, new legislation, or does the Attorney General need to issue an opinion saying, this is what I think heat of the moment means?
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at all of the possibilities,
Right.
all of the options that are available to us. But do you have more international?
Well, I have something
Don't you?
that corresponds to one of the
look at
bills involving Singapore.
Uh-huh.
And this doctor in Singapore went to the U.S. and purchased paid $200,000 for a sperm donor. I mean, he was the donor.
200,000?
Yeah, let me just double check on that. Yes, $200,000 to father a boy through surrogacy arrangements. So he hired this woman.
Has to be a boy.
A boy issued from this union.
Okay.
And is now 4. But the Singaporean doctor is raising the child and wants to adopt him in Singapore. And the court said, no, we don't approve of this kind of thing. The kid will be safe, obviously, you're his biological father. Oh, and the father is also gay and has been involved in a 13-year relationship. So it's been a controversy, and they lost because the judge said, District Judge Shobin Nair said, the immigration authorities act independently and will issue their own decision on the matter. She pointed out that the child was not stateless. He is an American citizen. Meanwhile, both parents live in Singapore. In any case, the court cannot, by an adoption order, enable Singapore citizenship. So I thought of that when you were speaking of the in vitro fertilization bill. It doesn't go everywhere in the world, I guess. So, I have other things I could chat about, if you'd like.
Well, we have a couple more minutes, but not a lot.
And then remember, my answer to the trivia question
Yes.
may be a little longer than usual.
Yes.
All right, well, this lesbian couple have sued in Bulgarian court. They were married in the UK, and the Bulgarian court doesn't recognize their union. They were married in 2017. They filed a request to their local government, Sofia municipality, to change their marital status, and they can't do it. So, step backward in Bulgaria. But, people are doing this now. All these cases are percolating.
Is
Well-
that cold weather?
Yes, and I'm gonna keep. I have a couple of stories, but I would keep them and use them next week, and so I can give you a little time
I'm glad I
your
was able
trivia.
to include that Singapore angle, though, because I don't want to interrupt you.
I've got to tell you that when I started with the trivia question, I thought it was going to be just this short little, and the trivia question was, this is the legislation that allowed for the conviction and incarceration in concentration camps of over 15,000 gay men during the Holocaust. And as Anne got it right, it is paragraph 175 of the Journal Penal Code, which was in effect from the 15th of May of 1871 until it was repealed the 10th of March, 1994. There was an estimate there were over 140,000 gay men who were convicted under this statute. And as I told Anne and Linda, when I started looking at this, all of a sudden I realized I was thinking over my head. Part of the documentation surrounding this is really poor, because when the Allied forces liberated the concentration camps, gay men were still considered to be criminals, and they were left there. And it's where the pink triangle comes from. This is the insignia that the Nazis used to designate that you were a gay man. You were at the bottom of the list when it came to a hierarchy within the concentration camp itself. There's an estimate there were over 15,000 gay men who were actively in the concentration camps, most of whom didn't survive. But we didn't go to the gas chambers. It was extermination through work. I'm giving you X number of calories per day, but I'm expecting this level of hard labor, and your body just gave out. There was an effort. I mean, and this is one of the pieces that always come up when talking about the Holocaust and concentration camp and our communities. There was an effort by the Nazi Party to include lesbians under paragraph 175, but they didn't know how to define lesbian sexuality, which I sort of read it and went, they have no imagination. But then the other piece of it was women were not giving any value within the German culture. You didn't count. They didn't care what women do because you were still fertile, and if I wanted you to have a child, there were ways of doing it. The other piece that just made me, conversion therapy, which we've talked about a lot, came out of the concentration camps. And it was taking gay men and taking them into the brothels and forcing them to perform very specific acts on the women in the brothels. Because the belief was, I could teach you how to be straight, and also inserting tubes into a very delicate area of your body and injecting testosterone because you were gay because you didn't have enough. Right. It's more history than you probably wanted to hear.
But we're all more informed by knowing things
but
we don't
it's
know.
our history, and we don't
Right.
talk about it. I mean, as I may interrupt you, as I had said last year when I went to Phil Scott's inauguration, when I was standing in line and was getting close to him, his security guard leaned into me and said, "The pink triangle, does it have meaning?" And when I explained to him what it meant, he looked at me and said, "Why don't I know that?"
Exactly.
How many people within our own communities don't know that?
Very few.
And with that, we've almost totally run out of time.
Yes.
Because Zach's ready to start frantically waving at us from the booth. So as Anne will lead us, thank you very much. Please join us again in 2 weeks and
Resist.
Resist.